Hello, everybody. I'm just happy to be here tonight. Jack Brewer is going to be joining us momentarily, and I want to just say that I have gotten messages from some of you saying that the chat is disabled, and I'm very sad. Mario was working behind the scenes to try to figure out what's going on. There might be some glitches in the matrix, and it would be a very sad day if I actually couldn't read your chat and interact with you on the show. I want to say thank you to Mario, who is always working tirelessly behind the scenes and who has also been a huge supporter of mine and a friend for many, many years. I also want to give a shout out to Peter and Bill, who is helping with our Facebook Expanding Frontiers research page. Thank you both for your assistance with social media and for just the support and being grounded people in the topic. This is really essential, especially now as we see so much division, not only in the country, but also across social media, specifically Twitter, with regard to the UFO topic. And that is most unfortunate. On that note, I also want to say when you get into groups or you use specific hashtags and you're being fed information and people are saying that there are specific people that are mining data and getting information about specific people, I just want to say that, if you've got evidence of specific people doing this, provide it or quit stirring a narrative that is not true just for your sake of stirring the narrative. It's really unproductive and takes us away from good research and also from a positive conversation about this topic and many other topics. I also want to just give you a little information for those of you who have been following my work for many years. You know that for the past 5 years, I've been involved with things that I would never wish on anyone else. 3 years ago, I made the decision to leave my then husband after 2 years of very brutal abuse, both physical and verbal. Most days of the week, threats to kill my friends, threats to kill civilian protesters, and threats to kill the president and also his fellow soldiers that are hang on one second, guys. I need to give this code to Mario. He's figuring things out on the back end. So hang on. So anyway, when I first left the situation, I was in a situation where I didn't know where I was going to go or how I was going to move out of it and keep my family safe and keep myself safe, and then also make sure that I was reporting information. As you know, I like to, I'm good about documenting specific things. And when the abuse first started to happen, I was very good about documenting that because I felt that at some point in time, it might be the last moment that I would spend on Earth. And I can't think of a week that went by or still goes by where I don't record a message saying goodbye to my friends and my family and making sure that as everyone, if something were to happen to me, that people understand information about local law enforcement's failure to protect me numerous times, about the failure of the Salt Lake County District Attorney to file harassment charges, stalking charges, and to make sure that probation terms were being met in order to keep not only myself safe, but the public. I went for 3 years, communicated with, and originally started out by sending messages to the Utah National Guard saying that, in providing evidence that there were threats to President Biden and President Obama, and also threats to fellow soldiers of my ex-husband. And that was met with actually really nothing. And in my opinion, they were very much about rushing to or trying to close ranks, so they were protecting and stopping any liability that they might be involved in. And it worked brilliantly. And unfortunately, the legal system was at use either unwittingly or wittingly by specific people. And I had initially several charges for domestic violence assault. And then there's one, and I'm just going to give you all this information because it's kind of cathartic for me to get this out in the open in a big way. I also had on my birthday 3 years ago a violation of the protective order. And so my ex was arrested and he was charged with a felony, which was then dropped to a misdemeanor. He was put on 2 years of probation, and he was supposed to be doing specific things, which would be counseling, anger management, all of these things. Those he, as of 2 months ago, had not started after 2 years. And that was very traumatic. There was also an incident where when he was living within 2 minutes of me, he was going to be served with a warrant for failure to appear in court, and law enforcement was so concerned, the bail bondsman was so concerned that they called law enforcement in, and Mr. Marks, my ex, threatened to die by cop suicide at that time. Like I said, 2 minutes away from me and my loved ones. And that was, really, really heartbreaking. And I can see you, Vanessa. Yay. So you're not blocked. I can see you, Vanessa. And I know that other people are having comment or problems in the chat, but I can see you. So I also obviously called the local law enforcement, and like I mentioned, provided many, many videos where I was being assaulted, where I was being hit in the head with a closed fist multiple times, in the jaw multiple times until I was on the floor, and or in the back of the head multiple times. I provided evidence of, as I mentioned, the threats to other individuals, including people in the military and friends and colleagues that were also harassed and threatened. All of those things were provided to local law enforcement. But unfortunately, and this is my impression, the person that was responsible for looking at these cases and helping me, which was his responsibility as a law enforcement officer, instead was either manipulated by my perpetrator or wanted to step in to protect his own because of my ex's affiliation as of being, for a hot moment, a former deputy sheriff and with the National Guard. And so that was really frightening, to provide physical evidence, to provide emails, to know that cases were getting dismissed. And I did do something, and this is something, and Vanessa, I can still see you commenting, so but nobody else. But this whole thing is so ugly to talk about. But I did what we did for the Phenomicon records for using Grandma, which is a statewide program that you can use to do records requests with the government. And so I did that, and I did it religiously, and I did it for every report that I made to the Salt Lake City Police Department. And what I found out by doing that, even though I wasn't given all the information, which I should have been as a victim of domestic violence, what I found out is that the police detective in charge was not investigating things. I've never met him 3 years later to this day in person. But he set up a situation, in my opinion, where my ex could very easily stand outside of my window or drive a foot away from me or go to a military base, which again, I provided video evidence of Mr. Marks moving out of our apartment, taking firearms, and also using firearms at the National Guard Camp Williams, which again was a violation of the restraining order. And so it was shocking to me to see that cases weren't being really properly reported, or cases weren't being filed. And when in one particular case, and I, shown the video to my friends, when I had, there was one instance where he was coming at me, and again, he, was verbally aggressive, but then, raised his fist and literally, like I was mentioning earlier, just hit me in the head repeatedly, repeatedly, closed fist, closed fist, closed fist, until I'm down on the ground, and just begging, for him to leave me alone. With video evidence, I must say, when you're when you're being attacked, to actually, have a record of that is amazing. But I was told by that detective that there wasn't enough evidence to go ahead with the case. So after the records request, I saw that that case was closed, and I went to the Salt Lake City prosecutor's office, the person specifically who closed the case, and called that person and said, "Can you please just tell me why, this is happening, and why you closed the case?" And I was told that it was because the detective said there was nothing there. And I said, "Why don't you do me a favor and spend a minute, go through my case, the evidence, and review it, and let me know." And with a half an hour, she called me back and just said, "I am so sorry that we didn't file charges. Charges will be filed, within the next couple days." And so, had I not, done a grandma to find out what was happening and had that information, then all of these cases, in all likelihood, would have been closed, and that would have allowed, a perpetrator who was abused before for many, many years, to go ahead and abuse again, which I have found out in the past, week that he has. Another domestic assault has been committed, and I was informed by someone, that has been really wonderful to me. I was informed of that. I was informed that my perpetrator was put into, uh, custody, taken into custody after the assault, and my ex, unfortunately, left jail. He got bail. He left jail, and what happened was he violated his terms of release from jail by going back to the residence of the person he assaulted, from my understanding, more than once. And so I was in contact with, law enforcement agencies in other jurisdictions, and I also, contacted his probation, officer's supervisor to ask why he wasn't on top of this, what he was doing to keep everybody safe. And, of course, I haven't heard back from his supervisor, but the law enforcement officers in the other jurisdictions were very, very empathetic, very kind, and they informed me that there was an active manhunt, so to speak, out for my ex, that was in combination with the state law enforcement. And then I was informed, and so you can imagine my, horror again when I'm learning that this person who abused me for 3 years, who threatened to kill me multiple times, who was mentally unstable, is out on the loose, and to my knowledge still has firearms. To know that again was even more trauma and terror. And then I found out that there was a felony warrant out for his arrest, and he was actually arrested. Luckily, nobody was killed in the process, and law enforcement did a wonderful job. And he is now he's in custody in jail on no bail warrant, because he has been deemed finally, a threat to the community and to the people that he has abused. So, luckily, in my case, in a separate jurisdiction in Salt Lake, word of this, I called the prosecutor, DA, who, everybody involved, and they issued finally another arrest warrant. And so he has two no bail arrest warrants and will be behind bars for, there we go, Paul, I can see you. Yay. So he is in jail. He had his first hearing this morning. And, I'm really, this is a cathartic moment for me to talk about it. It's also like I'm numb. I feel like I need to sleep for the next 5 years to get over the terror, the everyday terror that I lived in, not being able to go outside and go to the store without the thought of being murdered by this person who is proficient in killing people. That is his training. And so, I knew back then I could see the games that were going on with law enforcement, with the National Guard. I could see that they had no interest in really, really protecting me. But I also knew that if I didn't continue to speak out, to do records requests, and to call people out, that he would either injure somebody again, that he would kill someone, he would harm law enforcement, people at the National Guard, or he would commit mass murder. This individual told me numerous times that he studied for many years the Las Vegas shooter, and he did buy firearms that the Las Vegas shooter used. When we were married, I slept on a bed of thousands of rounds of ammunition. And almost, on a weekly basis, if not more, I would be told how each type of ammunition would do damage to internal organs, or how this specific bullet could pierce a cop car door. And I was also repeatedly shown a book that is called Advanced Interrogation Techniques, and it was written by a former law enforcement agent, and he showed me, this book multiple times. You read this, you understand, this is what I'm doing to you. I'm breaking you down. And it was 20 hours a day of sleep deprivation. It was screaming. It was me hiding, trying to get some sleep in the bathtub, or leaving and trying to go somewhere where I wasn't putting my family in jeopardy. And, it was like living in absolute hell, in limbo, and this constant stress where you never know. It's this fight or flight, which is so draining on you when you go through this. And luckily for me, I had a handful of friends that were constantly talking to me and saying, okay, this is, I hear you, I understand, I can hear him in the background, let's just calm everything down, and, and just supported me until I was ready to relocate someplace safe. And I'll never forget that when I had initially, one of the times I called law enforcement after I knew that there was a warrant out for his arrest, the police officer, and I was frightened because he was in the same apartment complex, shocking. And the police detective said, well, we don't get paid enough to deal with this kind of stuff. And, he said, why don't you leave and go to a shelter? And I said, I've got family close. I have animals here. And he literally said to me, well, if you're not leaving, then you're not scared enough. And interestingly enough, I tried to do a records request for that conversation. And of course, the conversation that I got back was nothing like the conversation that I had. But to really to live with that, to know that he is a lifelong member of a group that has been deemed a domestic terror organization, where most of the founding members are serving decades in prison, to know that law enforcement, some people in law enforcement wanted to protect this individual or not do their job, or a combination of both, that was, again, just so horrifying, thinking that you have people there who are being paid, who have rules and regulations to follow when it comes to keeping the community safe, when it comes to keeping domestic violence victims safe. And none of those were being followed. And my life was getting more in danger. And I left, as I mentioned, I left him and tried to go into hiding as best I could, and then recover from all of that and try to get any help that I could. And then I started to find out that he was coming into the business that was right next to mine, which has access 5 feet from me, direct access into my business. And he had come into that business month after month after month. He knew where the spare key was. And, it was just this taunting, this monitoring my surroundings, stalking me like I was prey, much like he did when he worked at Skinwalker Ranch, dressing up in a ghillie suit and putting makeup on and going out there and stalking the people that were coming to the gate. Let's be real. And so all of this has been, as you can imagine, it's really a wonder that I'm actually here, that I'm putting one foot in front of the other. And I really honestly couldn't have done that. And I wanted to say, without all of you, I can see all of you in chat. I can see your love and support. And you have messaged me privately over the years and given me your support. And I want to thank you for that. I also want to, before I bring Jack on, talk a little bit about what happened last week. Last week, I was informed that the DA was potentially trying to negotiate with him after 3 freaking years. They haven't even prosecuted the assault charges. 3. There should have been more. But they wanted to negotiate with him and wanted to drop 2 of the assault charges and then take another assault charge and take the assault away from that and move it to criminal mischief, in hopes that he would still be able to get his retirement from the military. And when you have people that are supposed to be doing what they can do in a court of law to protect you, telling you that, again, they're going to drop charges. They already dropped the felony weapons charge because the National Guard was involved. And I'm sure the National Guard, was running defense on that. But to be told, after you've fought tooth and nail to be safe, to keep everyone safe, to have this constant garbage from people who are supposed to protect you has enraged me. It has traumatized me. It has inspired me. And what I will tell you now is, now that I'm safe and I can actually breathe for 2 seconds and go across the street and get a cup of coffee without, running back to my place of comfort in tears, I promise you, and I've heard stories from other women who have had similar terrifying experiences, and the Salt Lake City Police Department has completely dismissed them and put them into life-threatening situations time and time again. I'm collecting stories about this. And I promise you that I will take this moment and draw on the strength of all of you, and I will make sure that this is brought to the public's attention, and not just here in Salt Lake and not just here in Utah, but this will be made an issue across all of the United States, because this involves the military, because it involves law enforcement, because people have been hurt continually, and because there has to be a change in the system. I have to make changes with legislation. I have to make sure that people are in law enforcement and they're held accountable for not doing their job. And I want to make sure that people understand that people who are supposed to be protecting me in court have not done that, putting me and the public at risk. So I promise you, this will be exposed in a very methodical way, with details, with emails, with voice calls. This will be exposed, and I promise you, what I have gone through will help to lift up other domestic violence victims in Utah. And I will make sure that organizations that are nonprofits that have also been making millions of dollars in the name of domestic violence survivors who really don't do much for them, I will make sure that things like that are exposed as well. Because my life, the life of other women in Utah, matters. And if Gabby Petito, the horrific murder of Gabby Petito at the hands of her boyfriend, didn't do it, which we saw law enforcement fail, if the brutal murder of Lauren McCluskey at the University of Utah, brilliant, beautiful young girl who went to law enforcement, who begged for help, who was murdered by somebody at the University of Utah, if that can happen, and again, law enforcement failed, and yet nobody's doing anything. It's this, let's have a gala and pretend like we're doing things for domestic violence victims because we can have a little photo op and we look really good. Well, I'm here to say you've done nothing. You haven't protected anyone. And if you have, I would really like to see it. So I'm using my voice. I'm going to use my experiences. I'm going to use the information that I have, and I'm going to stand up to people who have put my life in danger, including my abuser, and I will make sure that everybody is held accountable for what they have done to pose a threat, to traumatize me and to traumatize other people. And now we've got another assault at the hands of the same individual who is dangerous. But I'm telling you, I'm here and I'm not going away. So after 3 years, if you all think that you can discourage me enough to get me to go away like you do to so many other women, you've got another thing coming, and you clearly don't understand who Erica Lukes is. So anyway, on that note, I am going to bring in my friend, my colleague, and thank you for your support in chat. I am here with Jack Brewer, who is also in Expanding Frontiers Research, which is an organization that all of you know about. It is a nonprofit that Jack and I started with the help of Barry Greenwood 2 years ago. And in that time, we have made such tremendous breakthroughs. We have done great investigative work. We have done, Jack has been religious about doing FOIAs. We have a huge archive now. Again, thanks to Emma Woods, thanks to what Jack has done, thanks to Barry Greenwood, and all of these things, people helping with this. It is really, really fun, and I wanna just give us a shout out at Expanding Frontiers Research because we actually were awarded, the Utah Investigative Journalist 2024 award for the best use of grandma. And I want to just say, first of all, the Utah Investigative Journalist is an organization that I have been following for many, many years because of the quality of work that they do. They are investigative journalists who get in there and they do records requests, they do deep dives, and it is really just an impressive honor to be involved, to be recognized by the Utah Investigative Journalist for our work on Phenomicon. And so, congratulations, Jack, on this honor.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's been a privilege and an honor to collaborate with you and to be on the board with you and Barry. I have made it clear to Erica that I support her using her platform to talk about her personal case. Her followers care about her. I know a lot of you are interested in her circumstances and want to know about it. And I have been as supportive as possible of her plight in this very fortunate series of events. So kudos to you for your work, Eric, and the things you've been talking about the first part of the show tonight. And moving on to the Utah Investigative Journalism Project, yes, that's a group that Erica was familiar with and I got introduced with, that is run by a gentleman named Eric Peterson. And it's a nonprofit. He publishes resources for this and does workshops and webinars and things like that. And we're just elated to have won a contest for the 23 best use of the GRAMA, the Utah Government Access and Management Act. It's Utah's version of the Freedom of Information Act. And it was for the work we did on Phenomicon, digging into those records and the way we crafted and composed some requests and how we separated the information being kind of spirited away in government eyes. And along with the award that we're just elated about, Investigative Journalism Project also made $100 donation to Expanding Frontiers that we're very grateful for. And in their upcoming 2024 almanac for reporters, there is a very nice write-up, a 4-page article that we're just about. And so thank you to Eric and the Utah Investigative Journalism Project. And we're just elated about having recognized by professional journalists when neither Eric and I have ever claimed to be that. We're just kind of folks using the resource we have to write about things we're interested in and for the public with things we're interested in. I think Erica likes to call it citizen journalists or that effect. Yeah. You did, Erica.
I really hate that. I was on a roll
It's
there.
okay.
Oh,
Take it from the top.
well, you know what? Okay, but okay, but at least I kind of, whatever. It's a day, and I'm allowed to talk and not unmute my mic. Um, but I was just going to say I want to just thank you, Jack, because earlier you were broadcasting from a different location, and you've had issues with the internet in that area. And we've had, as you've seen with the chat room tonight, we've had issues with StreamYard. And so Jack was just really, really good about moving to a different location so he could be here tonight. And I really appreciate Jack's dedication to doing that. So thank you, Jack, for that. And I also want to again go back to Utah investigative journalist who has done really incredible work not only on domestic violence and exposing some of the malfeasance here with law enforcement, but also they've done brilliant work on cryptocurrency scams and also other types of business fraud that we see here in Utah or environmental issues. And so it really is an important group of people that have done amazing work over the years. And I also want to just mention too, Robert Gerke from the Salt Lake Tribune a few months back did an interview with me about the archive and about our organization, which again, he is such an amazing journalist and highly respected here in Utah. There's a lot of political reporting. And that was also an honor for Expanding Frontiers to have that recognition. And so even though, like you say, Jack, we're not journalists, we don't claim to be journalists, we're doing research, we're digging into important topics that affect, since we're a Utah nonprofit that affect a lot of things in Utah, including the environment, including misspending of the misappropriation of funding that goes to conferences like Phenomicon, where they're promoting ideas that are just not, I don't know what's happening there, but a handful of people are making quite a good amount of money on that. And that's at the taxpayer expense. And it's also, it's just amazing that that kind of information would be promoted in the name of tourism, especially when you can't even go to Skinwalker Ranch. It's ridiculous. So, anyway, you can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to read our blog. You can also go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to become a Patreon for $15 a month. And then you get the first glimpse of specific things that we've requested, records requests, and support our work. And I want to just thank the people in chat room who have actually become members of Expanding Frontiers Research, and those of you who have become members who aren't in chat. It is really important for we want to keep doing this. I love it. Like I will tell you, in the past, in my whole time in the public world, investigating or doing whatever with UFOs. I think this has been such a positive and fun collaboration and a fun project because we're not only looking at this topic, but we're also branching out and doing other important things and looking at other issues. And I really love that. And I think it's important. And I love the fact that we've gotten props from people that are highly respected. So it's cool. And thanks for your support, you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Your stations, they help us with our public records request work, produce Erica's show. They help us maintain our website and the operating expenses. And there's a couple ways that you can help us with that. One is go to our Patreon that you can access through our homepage, or it's patreon.com/expanding frontiers research, and become a member there for a minimum donation of $15. You can give a month if you want, as one person recently did, and we really appreciate that. And for other people that would prefer to make a one time donation periodically or something to that effect, you can go to our homepage at expandingfrontiersresearch.org and use the donate button, which takes the secure PayPal link. And then you can use PayPal or a credit card or a debit or all the traditional ways of transferring money, whatever you'd like. At the Patreon, as Erica alluded to, we are sharing records as we get them, giving them to our supporters to look over. Then we'll blog posts after we've analyzed and discussed the records and share them more publicly. And we kind of have an update at Phenomicon situation, a bit of an update. As many of you are aware now, one of the way that we won the journalist award actually was finding out that Phenomicon was written by the county, and then in a series of grammar we were provided as Eric Peterson described it, a paltry amount of records, and we appealed that, resulting in dozens more pages of record, including over 90 pages of Phenomicon contracts, most of which was blacked out or redacted, as they call it. We appealed the redaction of those contracts on the grounds that the county did not have the authority to enter into agreements with service providers paid public funds, and from the outset obstruct the grandma process. Part of the contract was that it would not be disclosed to the public. And we won that appeal. And what the appeal order from the State Records Committee says is that from the date of the order, which was April 1st, that the county has 30 days now to supply the contracts. Uh, the only things redacted would be like personal email, tax numbers, or social security numbers, things like that, which we never opposed. We were just
Right.
delighted. Yeah, we were delighted that we got granted in full and unanimously by the member of the State Records Committee. Now we've been informed by county that informed Expanding Frontiers Research and the State Records simultaneously that they do not intend to take that ruling to district court and appeal it themselves, which is an option that they could do that if they wanted to roll the dice. They have 30 days from April 1st now to produce the records. They indicated in their email that they were going to wait the 30 days event that any of the parties that are involved on the contracts want to appeal the ruling, even though the county is not. So we have a position on that at this point in time. We're begging trouble. We'll develop a on it if and when the time comes that we need to. But the update would be, the most part, Uinta County has indicated that they do not intend to re, re, object further to the records that we want on appeal.
Right, which I mean, I think the whole thing was very interesting. You can go to, we posted the link to the hearing, which is important for people to listen to for multiple reasons, especially if you want to start looking at government transparency and learning how to use a process like grandma. And it was interesting because the attorney for Uinta County mentioned in the hearing that this was like giving up the secrets of a magician, something along those lines, with
Yes, he did.
regards
He
to
did. He
the
compared it to
contracts.
magic.
And so that
Yeah.
to me was, a very, very curious wording, and I would say it probably is pretty accurate wording. Um, so it'll be interesting to see. And also, in that hearing process, they were offered an opportunity to speak on behalf of the people that were the contracts that were speakers of Phenomicon, the paranormal convention, Bigfoot convention in Vernal, and nobody, there was nobody spoke on behalf of them except for the attorney. So it will be interesting to see how this unfolds. It's great that the State Records Committee understood that these records are in fact public, as they should be. And so we'll see what happens in the next few days, the next week or so. And then we will definitely keep all of you posted about what we uncover, what we find out, and then be posting those documents, the unredacted documents, excluding obviously names and personal identifying information, but we will be posting those on Expanding Frontiers Research. So you can look forward to that. But again, some of these things are, and thank you, Paul, for donating. That's really wonderful. And also, too, I just want to go back and say thank you for everybody that is here. Looking in chat again, this is like such a fun thing to see everybody communicating and being so respectful. I want to give a shout out to Emily, who is an amazing interviewer. And I just, I'm a huge fan. So Emily Louise Weird Reads, you can go check out her YouTube channel. She has been just kicking butt and taking names, and she's funny and she does really good research. And I also want to give a shout out to Tanner Boyle, who also has got a wonderful blog, and he's doing research as well. And so we've got some really fun, neat people. And I mentioned, and sorry to go off the trail a little bit, Jack, but I always mention on the show that it's really cool for us to see all of you, to see this community that we're creating, and that we're creating and making a safe space for people, where people are, they can share experiences, they can talk about things rationally without fear of, being bullied or harassed. And it is a very, or in there, everybody's acting like an adult. My Lord, how did this happen in this topic? But we're doing it. And I think this is really, really cool. And regardless of what other people that want to push everybody down is doing, we're going to be, here, we're going to be above it. And we're going to continue to grow our international community, all of us. So anyway, I just had to go off on that tangent. And hey, Paul, it's nice to see you. Paul Carr is here. He's been on my show as well. So really great to see all of you here. And I want to say hi to Ted. And I also want to just give Ted a shout out for being such a great person to me over the years and helping me through a lot. And thank you, Scott, for the super sticker. And thanks for, all of you guys are all over different countries. And so for you guys to stay up late, get up early and watch the show and support us, that's really cool. Thank you.
Tanner is indeed a talented researcher and writer, and I see his research interest is what I'm sipping on. And so this is iced coffee with no ice, no sugar, no cream, nothing.
Ugh.
Just black coffee
Ugh.
is what that is. And I like to say hello to everyone in chat too, and always good to see all of the folks that come. And as I mentioned, I know you've had people over the years that have been supportive of your plight, and it's important to keep people informed. It's important that things not fester in darkness and in quiet. While expanding Frontiers research, the board of Erica and Barry and me, there are a number of people that also contribute to the work we do in ways in addition to financially, such as Vanessa Valilco has
Yes.
been the talented and intelligent Vanessa Valilco has been very helpful in a number of ways, including doing public service interviews with me about domestic violence, a couple of them that I'd encourage you to go to the page and take a look at. William Pullen has been just with social media, promoting our shows, promoting our links, promoting our social media. He's now helping out directly with the Facebook page. If you face, please follow Expanding Frontiers Research over there and stop by and say to William and have help us out there. We have a number of talented and resourceful people who have helped us with some proposal projects, writing letters of recommendation. Some of these folks have been written into the proposals that had specific skill sets that coincided with the proposals we were submitting. And so there's a lot going on in addition to just what the board has done. And we really appreciate all of you folks. Thank you.
Yeah, we do. And I think like I said, it's just such a fun community. And I have met through this whole process, I mean, people in chat, even though most of you I've never met in person, but I feel like I know you because you've been watching the show and because you've been so kind to me over the years. And Mario, I've never met Mario. And dang it, one of these days I've just got to meet Mario or meet Peter and all of you. It is really, the internet is interesting sometimes, but it can also be a really wonderful place to make connections for all of us with people all over the world. And thank you, Michael, for the super sticker. That's really nice. You guys are great, but I love it. So, and it keeps me, with all the darkness that I mentioned in my life, these types of things just help keep me positive and keep me interested. I love researching. I love digging into things. I love just the process of utilizing FOIA or grandma. And then, I mean, it's just, we've uncovered so many things, and we're going to continue to do that. We are focusing on, with our archive, also on different cults. Specifically, we've got a lot of FOIA request that we received from Thurston County with regard to Ramtha, who, if you don't know who Ramtha is, she was very, very big back in the 90s. And she was on every talk show. I think she was on Oprah numerous times, but she was just a very striking, blonde woman, a presence, and she was kind of in that Shirley MacLaine type of era. She was somebody that was one of those presences, but she was channeling this this ancient fellow, Ramtha. Jay-Z Knight was channeling Ramtha, and so that was quite. It's been interesting to see what her community, her cult, has been up to over the years, and now Jack is traveling to another location. This is like we are live on the street reporting, and we are moving around. This is like a good time. You never know what you're going to get on this show. This is why I love it so much, and why you guys can hang with me. And then here is Mufasa just to say hi to Amy and Dinah, just so you guys know. But yeah, so hopefully Jack will be back. But hey, if not, I'll turn off my mic and just talk, and you guys won't understand what I'm saying because you won't hear me. So that will be fun. I also want to talk a little bit about, not only do we have Ramtha and some of those, a lot of files they've been just dishing out, giving us a lot of things, including videos of people ramming the gate. We've also done records requests for Ted Kaczynski, who was a Unabomber. And you can go to Expanding Frontiers Research and check out our blog and see that. And then also another area of interest for us, we've done several blog posts on this topic, Joe Firmage. Joe Firmage, as some of you know, most of you know in chat, people listening might not know, was a very brilliant entrepreneur in the tech industry back in the 80s, I do believe, 80s, early 90s. And then he went off into another realm and apparently defrauded a lot of people of money, and now is in jail and has been charged with elderly abuse. And so you can go to our website and see Joe Firmage files obtained from the Salt Lake City Police Department. You can also go down and see other blogs that we've done on Joe Firmage in the past, including one entitled SEC Witness. Many one went through $59 million. You can check that out, and all the other blogs. And so Jack is back. Oh, mama.
Sorry about.
We need a theme
Yeah,
song.
you were discussing Ramtha and the Firmage record, and we have some of that material the Patreon, and as I mentioned earlier, as we continue to analyze things, we'll bring it over to the blog in a more formal post than when we just share things the followers. Also at the Patreon are the redacted Phenomicon contracts that just have basic header and the name of the they call it the talent, which is and the amount they were paid, and then the signatures at the bottom. Other than everything else was blacked out, which is what we appealed. And so we've shared at the Patreon. And yeah, we just got a fresh batch of records today from Thurston County, Washington Sheriff's Office on Rana, and Erica and I were just kind of glancing through them before the show, as we'll be digging into those more later and unleashing them at the Patreon, and then doing a more formal post on that kind of stuff in the near future.
Right.
So we get lots of stuff, and I just wanted to start giving it to people if it helps them with their research, sorting it out, and then keeping the blog more to a focused the story, here's the records kind of thing.
Right, and I want to say that one of our areas of interest, obviously, is digging into people that have extremist ideologies, people that are cult figures, and that is really important, especially, when you look at it through the lens of the UFO world or the conspiracy world. You see people that are using that as kind of a gateway to get in, and then indoctrinate people into their cult, and as a result, bad things happen. As I talked about with Barry Greenwood, what the past two times he's been on the show talking about Heaven's Gate and things like that. So it really is important to understand the mindset of what goes on, and understand some of the criminal elements that are around these cult figures. So we can all learn about that, and I think that's very important. So.
Yeah, it is. Like you mentioned, Emily Louise, she's been doing some really good work on um, cults of yesteryear. So is Tanner. Roy is very knowledgeable on these things, and it's interesting, but it's not just interesting. It's not just a cool story from 1940 or 1970 or even 1930. Also shows you how things shaped the current political and social economic climate, and how things shaped up. And our most recent Patreon post is because we got some records from the FBI on the National Socialist White People's Party, which is about as offensive as you could have, and is a mouthful. And uh, we shared those records, and we also walk the Patreon members through the whole process. We show them the original request, we show them the covenants we got with FBI and how it unfolded, all the way to now that they've all told us there are more records at the National Archives, and so we've requested those. And um, you can learn to do this yourself or just watch whatever your interest level may be.
Right, and I
But
really
it
want to go in there, and excuse me for interrupting you really quickly. So we did that request because in the Andruffle files that I have here, obviously I've talked about that on every show, so it is really really cool. But there, she for many many years was in communication with and investigated claims made by the Reverend Harrison Bailey, and he was a very interesting person who felt that he had experiences. At first, he thought that they were due to perhaps military testing of some sort, and then later thought that they were paranormal, extraterrestrial type of things. But there's one episode where he was in California, and he had photos that were allegedly of something abnormal, and a group approached him and wanted to make an exchange for the photos, and he was apparently, according to the police reports and by his own statements, he was basically kidnapped. And this whole story is so mind blowing, but that's where what we just did the records request on comes into play. So if you could keep explaining that, Jack, that would be great.
absolutely, that's a big part of the story. The whole point at of our requests, there are things that Erica is aware of, or that says, I think this would be interesting. And she was aware of it in the Andruffle files that was about Reverend Bailey. And he had some strange experiences. He was assaulted at one point by people that were misrepresenting themselves to be with the media, but it became apparent were Mr. Bailey was black, to be clear. Reverend Bailey was a black in Pasadena, California in the 1970s. And Andruffle had material that Erica then has now that indicates this happened. He was assaulted on September 16th, 1970. And this apparently involved being drugged as well. The way he told it, police, was the last thing he remembered was talking to these guys in their car and getting irate about some of his views and um, opinions on civil rights and social circumstances. And then they hung him free with a shoulder harness so that it didn't hang him fatally. The next thing he knew, he was waking up with the police taking him out of the tree. And so we pieced together from that and another clipping that Ann Druffel had saved, and just a matter of couple weeks after that event, the Pasadena, it may have been the sheriff or a chief of police, it was a leading law enforcement official, was making it clear, publicly stating that the National Socialist White People's Party were not welcome in Pasadena, and that then making rumblings about wanting to be there to do public demonstrations and things like that. So that is what led to our request. So we requested FBI records on that party, and we did the scope to between 1974 and 1976. And they released 24 pages of various records of investigations on the group. And as I mentioned, told us that a number of other files were in the possession of the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA. So now we have requested that material to, and that's just how we do it. Just pull the next thread, see how far it goes. And, sometimes you end up with quite a bit of interesting stuff. So we do that. That's what we did with this particular case, and we just tried going with a number of cases. And like in a best case scenario, you're just always getting interesting stuff in your email inbox that you're like, wow, this is interesting to know too.
Right. And the whole process is so fascinating to me. Like, I love going back and looking through the archive. And I've had many people donate over the years, and just going in there, picking up a file, going back, and then, like you said, just kind of pulling on a thread, and then doing records requests and seeing what comes up, like taking specific key, like the involvement with him being a black man that was abducted and put in a really horrific circumstance, and to see that kind of overlapping with the UFO world. That's another interesting thing. And also, with that in mind, some of the work that we've done on NICAP and Kehoe and some of the other people that were involved in the subject back in the 60s, that had very interesting ties to people in intelligence and in other groups. So this is something that has been very fascinating for us, and you have done great work over the years, Jack, with your books
Thank you.
on digging into this.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. In the event, people might wonder, the question would be, well, is Mr. Bailey still alive? And did you request on him if he is deceased? And he is deceased, and we did a request to the FBI on him, and they informed us that identified no responsive records. If I recall correctly, I think they did say that some potentially responsive records may have been destroyed or were destroyed, so they can't say if they were necessarily responsive or not, but they had reason that they were. And so that's kind of interesting. They probably did investigate, and hopefully we'll get some glances of that.
Yeah, his whole life was fascinating, and I'm really glad that I've got Anne's files because she has, I can't even tell you how many files she has with his original drawings of things that he experienced, of his medical records, of their pursuit to get his medical records, because he was somebody that had some pretty significant illnesses and wasn't sure whether that was flying saucer disease, he called it, or whether that was something that was a result of his military service. And so, interesting man. He was very active in his community, in his church, and a really, from reading the correspondence between him and Anne, and also reading his stories, I mean, he was a very kind person and lived a very interesting life. And so, to me, I'm really looking forward to getting all of those things scanned, and then again adding another bit to our online archive.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it is interesting. It You that have read some of my material, like my UFO Trail blog and the Grays Have Been Framed, are aware that I harbor suspicions that the MK Ultra projects, drug projects, may have at a minimum influence some of the fringe communities, the UFO community, UFO, the paranormal community. And to cut to the chase here, it interests me somewhat about Reverend Bailey that we have someone in this instance that was reporting strange phenomena apparently, and has drawn the attention of NICAP and UFO investigations because of, and then seems to have fascists show up and drug him and do things with him, hoist a tree and hang him while he was apparently unconscious. Um, that kind of thing just interests me. Like, does that show some kind of parallel between the fascists and the CIA, MK Ultra subculture of that point time of the 1970s? We're talking just, you know, the era that the hills were becoming more known.
Right, and let's go a
Like,
little, let's do a really quickly, let's go for our audience, if people, because a lot of people don't know about MK Ultra. Can you give us an explanation of MK Ultra?
it was a massive CIA undertaking to use drugs, hypnosis, and uh, pretty much anything they could, the flagpole, to modify human behavior. It was done initially under the guise of a defensive program, like to keep soldiers that might be become prisoners of war. How can we defensively stop the Russians from messing with our minds? But it was later, it was clear that it was more offensive and involved some 140 something projects, and by the CIA's own admission, used nonprofit organizations and educational institutions as conduits for transferring money to keep the CIA from being directly linked into projects at Georgetown and other prestigious universities. The Ivy League was involved in it, a lot of medical institutions, and they used combinations of drugs and hypnosis. At first, kind of guise of how to keep people from being interrogated effectively and to improve interrogation techniques. And then that progressed to full on trying to get people to do things that are against their moral and ethical uh, value that they wouldn't normally be doing, and even try to get them to not be aware that program and to forget they did it, and which is the man candidate whole thing. Um, Maybe people aren't familiar with that reference, but it progressed from interrogation techniques to trying to create assassins that weren't even aware that assassins. So a lot of conspiracy grew out of that. There massive, absolutely massive amounts of experimenting on unwitting human research subjects in the military, at military bases, in the public domain, public places without people being aware. One of the more infamous things was a brothel in New York and another one in San Francisco
Mhm.
that the Johns were um, observed and drugged, and it just really went off the rails. There was aerosol released in ways, things like this. And I bring up that part because it just kind of stands to reason to me that even if the idea of let's like intend to use an alien meme as a like one of the conspiracies is that the powers that be used the alien abduction meme as a memory for their experimentation with unwitting human research subjects. Even if that one's a bit for researchers to swallow, or at a bare minimum, can effectively be proven to be accurate, it seems to me it's not such a stretch that these people that were drugged on subways and when they were in bars and at brothels and things like that might come up with unusual theories about what happened to them if they didn't know they were drugged. Like if you just had no context of what it's like to do too much acid or to do chemicals that you don't even know exist, just sprayed through an air conditioning system. Um, I pretty much envision how, um, in hindsight, years later, people have read Communion. When people have read about the hills, they might say, wow, it happened to me. I lost 10 hours one night and I was bruised up, and all I remember was these visions of these really weird looking beings. I could easily envision a scenario like that.
I mean, it is interesting, and I want to just say that Dugway Proving Ground is here in Utah. We've done records requests with regard to Dugway. There have been mentions of some of the MK Ultra projects leading to an institute out at BYU, and again, that's something that is not known. We kind of dug into that and found that out, and have a records request out on that as well. And so it's fascinating to see some of these academic institutions that have, flown under the radar with regard to this type of experimentation. Um, and I definitely think the more we do digging here in Utah, we might find out much, much more about that.
Yeah, yeah. We have become aware in our research, and it's open source material. I mean, people can read about through the work of John Marks, who wrote for the Manchurian Candidate, a number of credible works that credible citations that show you the documents that have been about the universities and the colleges and the institutions that were involved in this research. And if anything, Erica kind of tapped the brakes on that because we don't want to fear her or just promote unsubstantiated crazy stuff. But it is interesting. And another research request, FOIA request that came from things Erica was aware of was we go series of requests on different things. And like with Mr. Bailey, do the request on Harrison Bailey and the National Socialist White People's Party and FBI in Pasadena, and just a few all at once, and see what happens. And in another circumstance, Erica was aware of some circumstances surrounding some different laboratories in Utah, and so some requests on that. And one of the things we got back was it informed us that this laboratory had been doing some testing on samples of material that seemed to be that the FBI had become concerned that
Anthrax.
yeah, anthrax that involved biological warfare, and they were doing testing, and the FBI was becoming concerned if guidelines were in place and if all of the proper protocols were being followed. We were surmising from this small number of records that we got. So then we went ahead and submitted, okay, well, let's cite these passages in these records and ask the FBI for the information they did on these Dugway Proving Grounds samples at this point in time. Like, what is this about? And we recently got a response on that, that it over 300 responsive pages, and they're informing us of what the the time frame will be. And how we're looking at about 3 years on something like that to have it processed and to receive it. And these are the kinds of things that, as an organization and with you supporters, we're wanting to really look hard at. Maybe this is the of expanding frontiers, and this is the legacy that, as we go through borders and we pass torches and thing progress, that maybe we will have ongoing FOIA requests that span years, to so that these records aren't just left in an archive somewhere, eventually disposed of, and no one having seen.
Hang on. So I will say that I want to go back to, and one of the interests that I had was back maybe about 15 years ago. There was a story that hit the news, and this was like an ongoing investigation about the fact that live anthrax uh, spores were being transferred, mailed via regular mail to different research facilities all over the world, because the people that were responsible for the process of killing the anthrax before it was supposed to be shipped to research facilities somehow during that process weren't doing their job correctly. And so this was a huge scandal that again was people were trying to cover this up. And there is a definite record for all of these things, but this is where one of those research facilities where we're doing records requests on, and then narrowing down our scope as to what we want to focus on with regard to these records, because there's so many records. So it's fascinating, and again, it goes to show how important public transparency is, especially with regard to shipping live anthrax and not following specific protocols that potentially put the public in danger.
Absolutely. And as a board of directors, we want to be financially responsible too, and not borrow money from tomorrow saying, yeah, give us those records today. Um, there costs involved with processing the records if our um, fee waivers are denied, and they're usually right with that. And I don't altogether have a problem with that. I mean, these intelligence agencies and the National Archives, they're publicly funded too.
Right.
So if they put people to work reading line by line 350 pages of records, it's not entirely unreasonable that they at least like to break even on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's like pretty good nonprofit work to me, though, that we might, um, and our financial supporters might be committed to uncovering and publishing these types of files. Some of you are aware the considerations we're giving the Unabomber records at this point. Ted Kaczynski, we got a few 140 pages, I think, of records that had been previously released on the now deceased Kaczynski, and in the process were informed that there are over 50,000 pages responsive records plus digital media, which means photos and video and all kinds of things in the FBI possession. And we've been finding out uh, how much of that we're willing to invest in and um, have our do we think that's a good decision for our financial supporters, and to what extent, and how the different ways we might would go about doing that. Bring that up at this point because it kind of ties in to the anthrax with Dugway Proving Ground that um, there's a lot of FOIA requests that any group, any researcher will go that they'll say, "Do you want the first 100 records for free? And we're going to charge you after that." And there's different tiers too, that if you like request less than 50 pages, you get it a lot faster than 50 to say 300 pages or 300 to 500. Sure, when you get up to 50,000 pages, you're looking a matter of years that it would take someone to go through that material, even if they started today, which they're not going to. You'll just a queue. And so we're weighing those decisions, and we appreciate your input on it and what you feel as a supporter, what you're interested in learning about, what you think it's important for an organization, a organization to release to the public to do its work, getting it on. And we're just thrilled to no end to be facilitating this, to be involved in it, to be being recognized by 13 and by the Utah Investigative Journalism Project for the work we're doing. Um, just elated, absolutely elated.
Absolutely, we are, and thank you for talking about that. We'll look forward to seeing what records we can get and how much interest we have in Ted Kaczynski. I personally think this would be, an exceptional thing to have out to the public for numerous reasons. Just also, to see the lengths at which the law enforcement went to try to find him, identify him. That process in and of itself is a fascinating thing. And I also want to say that when you've done the FOIA requests, there have been agencies that have been very, very helpful to you and to us through this process. So,
They have. With the FBI is one of my go-to sources. Um, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I mean, they show what's going on. And as I've mentioned on some of our instructional videos, there's just ways that work better than others to go about that. But they, as agencies go, the FBI is forthcoming in my experience. It's a matter of if they have the records or not, and if subject to release or not. And that's it, it often seems pretty cut and dried, and I appreciate that. There's not a lot of personalities, and is my experience. Other people have some different experience, but I found them at least pretty consistent and reliable. I think things Erica might be thinking about when she says some agencies have really worked with us. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has um, been very open to even getting on and saying, look, we got 130 pieces of digital and paper material on that subject you uh, requested. And like that happened, we had done a test on Joseph Firmage's Mini One
Right.
Corporation. And the SEC said, you're looking at a lot of money, a lot of time here you want to do. And they were very willing to negotiate it with us and help us craft the request in a way that like got us more of the meat and potatoes of it, and uh, spend a lot of everybody's time and resources what might be just less than particularly interesting pages and pages and pages of material. Plus, you want the meat and potatoes, and there's nothing that stops you from requesting part of it now and part of it later and part of it later and part of it later. And if it would take, like theoretically, if it would take you 3.5 years to get 150 pages on Dugway Proving Grounds, you could request 50 pages every 3 or 4 months too. Could do it that way as well if you felt like it. There's no rule that says just because you reduce the scope of the Kaczynski request to how about memos only exchanged between FBI agents on a date range of this year to that. Just see what it says, see what it is, how much material it is. There's no rule that's forfeit the rest of the material. Then you can keep citing that response to your previous request of the 50,000 pages, 56,000 actually, and continue to say, of those pages, I would like scribe a different type of material. Give me those responsive records
Right.
indefinitely. You can do that indefinitely.
Right. And so I want to talk a little bit about just to move on to some of the records requests that we've done here with Grandma. I want to talk a little bit about Sean Reyes, who is the attorney general here for Utah, has been embroiled in quite a bit of controversy with regard to Tim Ballard, who is the big star of Operation Underground Railroad. They did The Sound of Freedom, a really horrific movie, to be quite honest. Tim Ballard has this organization that has gone down to South America, taking wealthy businessmen down there to allegedly liberate people from child sex trafficking. And he has been accused of sexually assaulting many women involved in this organization. The Attorney General, Sean Reyes, has also been involved with that organization and has gone on quote unquote stings with Tim Ballard, and as a result has been in the spotlight as he should be for these things. And Sean Reyes has also appeared on stage with Brandon Fugel and the cast of Skinwalker Ranch at different conferences and on the show Skinwalker. What is it even called? I've had it blocked from my mind. The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And, even though he's not allegedly there as the attorney general, he certainly, they certainly make that known that that is his role, promoting paranormal phenomenon, and also stating that in one episode that there was a helicopter, a suspicious helicopter moving over the ranch, and that this was potentially, some sort of violation, something like that. But we've done records requests for communications between Sean Reyes and Brandon Fugel, who is a well-known businessman here in Utah and has been involved in several things that we discuss on expandingfrontiersresearch.org, the website with regard to Joe Firmage, with regard to SafeMoon, a cryptocurrency company, and also with Skinwalker Ranch and Phenomicon. There you have it. So definitely tell us a little bit about some of the records requests that we've made.
Yes, we did request the communications emails between in Attorney General and Brandon Fugel, and we actually and I'm going to explain this process because it ties in more, and hopefully I'll transfer and express how this progresses and you build on it with your requests. So we made that request to the general's office, and they told us that they reviewed a certain number of pages, but they found them to be exempt from disclosure because it might endanger someone, and they cited the specific grammar code, the exemption. We appealed that on the grounds that the people had willingly put themselves in the public eye, and that the fact, as Erica explained, that the attorney general was attorney general was denying that his work with Ranch and Fugel was in a professional capacity, that this raised the level of interest and gave the FOIA officer a burden of proof that this would be an invasion of privacy or would endanger someone's life, and not just the threat of an invasion of privacy, but would actually certainly be one. And the attorney general's office agreed with our appeal and granted it. They redacted personal identifiable information in the emails and provided them to us, and we have posted them on the Patreon. And these emails indicate that some type of threats were being made to Brandon Fugel. So that led to some requests we've done with police departments and things like that to see if we could learn more about. Mr. Fugel did not respond to an opportunity to comment. And so we've pursued this with police agencies. Another way it progresses is that in one of our requests, unrelated but sort of related, to the UN Sheriff's Office, we became aware of, as you know, the recovery of an abandoned motorcycle and a deceased body in the vicinity of Skinwalker Ranch. And we have reason to believe from sources that we had reason to believe that it happened, that has something to do with this deceased person's interest in purported paranormal phenomena, the same purported paranormal phenomena that people are paid by the county to claim exists,
Right.
that they're hiding the content on. So it's all kind of related and progresses. And so when we requested the reports and incident reports and responsive to the recovery of this body from the sheriff's office, they denied it because it might be invasion of privacy, it might endanger people. So we appealed. That appeal is still pending, but we were able to cite very own state records committee case in which our appeals were granted, as well as the Utah Attorney General case that they agreed that because the Skinwalker Ranch personnel willfully and intentionally raise public interest, that there's a greater burden of not showing the possibility of an invasion privacy, but that you have to demonstrate there absolutely will be an unwarranted invasion of privacy if those records are released. So we saw the eternal attorney general siding with us on that other appeal, and in our appeal to Uinta County for those records from the sheriff, and we're awaiting a final response on that.
Right, and that is an interesting and heartbreaking story, that we, as you mentioned, we have been informed and have things that we'll be putting forward as we get more information about that released from Uinta County. And it's a very, it appears to be a very sad tale of somebody being interested in things that aren't based in fact. And so I want to just segue too, because we're getting short on time, but I want to talk a little bit about the research, the FOIA requests that we did about the Galileo project. And if people
Oh
don't know
yeah.
about, and let me just, I want to go back and back up and just say, for people that don't know about the Galileo project, Jack, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The Galileo Project is an initiative that's being headed by Professor Avi Loeb, who is a Harvard astronomer, and it's essentially a search for extraterrestrial technological footprints here in our neighborhood, like um, crash spaceship, ET stuff on Earth, something that indicates technology from somewhere else that's not Earth. There's a lot of valid criticism that has been published about Professor Loeb's tactics. Um, did a FOIA request to see if the FBI had generated any interest, and it had, apparently. We received was 4 pages out of what the bureau told us, 28 responsive pages that were reviewed, and these 4 pages were heavily redacted. It what we could read of these 4 pages that posted on our blog, that's public and anyone can see that and get the um, records, is a basic explanation of how the project operates, some about its finances, how much money it's raised, according to Business Insider, an article in Business Insider. It's not clear why the FBI is compiling this information. The 4 pages that we were provided appear in electronic communication that seems to have been approved by an intelligence analyst. We're not sure what the purpose of it was or who all was involved in the communication. We certainly are unsure what the additional 20 pages that were withheld in full were about. So a bit of an up on that is that we appealed the withholding of the 24 page, the redactions of the 4 pages, and the Department of Justice declined to further release any of it. We asked, couldn't you at least release some of the additional pages in redacted form? No, they cite a number of things ranging from invasion of privacy to the potential for obstruct interfering with law enforcement investigations. They cite the code and exemptions for this, but I'm paraphrasing the here of why they withhold it. So the next step would be to sue them in court if a group was to do that and thought that it was a wise use of their contributors to pursue that.
And let me just
Uh,
ask you really quickly. So, if there was potentially a current in law enforcement investigation taking place, at what point do you make the decision, as somebody who's very experienced in doing FOIA requests, to respect the information that they're giving you, and at what point do you say, no, this is where I want to pursue potentially taking legal action to obtain that information?
that's a good question. I have never sued an agency. I've never taken an appeal to a district court. At this point in time, I haven't followed an appeal past the governing, like the Utah State Records
Mhm.
Committee or the Department of Justice, the governing body in the intelligence community. I have consulted with some attorneys that be potentially willing to do it for the um, just for the fees that are assessed for filing it, um, for various reasons. Expanding Frontiers pursued that at this point, and one of those reasons is that um, when you don't have access to those classified records and the judge sees them in camera, they call it, and make a decision on if the exemptions cited are reasonable. The FBI, we're in a current era. One attorney told me in a current era that the FBI is typically getting leeway with keeping its sources and its means of investigation private. We can go all the way back to the 1970s. I took interest in case, as you graciously were talking about my work with NICAP earlier, my work on NICAP, researching them. A 1970s case where a researcher sued the CIA for material, and judge in that case, and it was with Nicholas DeRochefort, one
Mhm.
of the
Mhm.
not founding organizers, and the judge in that case ruled that it's really important to be publicly transparent, but it's really important that an intelligence agency have an ability to act in secrecy
Right.
and protect its sources and means as well.
Right.
So you're really rolling the dice with hiring attorneys to sue intelligence agencies.
Well, and I mean, this goes into, I mean, as we can see, there are people that are in the UFO space, or different areas that are trying to get information that could be potentially damaging to national security. And so these are all options that I think we have to weigh as responsible researchers, and it is a very interesting thing to talk about, and we should, especially given this current climate where we're seeing so many antics take place with regard to that. Like, it's a fine line from, with all of this, but
Yeah, like a you're getting at there is that public sentiment about the actions of intelligence agencies is really fickle. Like you could go to right now and you could see somebody arguing about how well the CIA is involved, if the DIA is involved, if this agency, well then surely it's a whitewash. Something horrible is
Right.
going.
Right.
And then you scroll down two or three posts and you're going to see telling you that this guy formerly with the CIA is who you should be following and listening to. They're really fickle with it. And to take that point a little bit further, I'll just put it this way. If a group of educated, intelligent people that are prominent in careers, that are employed or associated universities and facilities that have a demonstrable history, as we were talking about earlier with the mid 20th century CIA. Ivy League has a history of working with intelligence agencies, recruiting grounds. Of course, they want the best, the brightest, the cultured, the wealthiest. Of course, they do. That being the case, if people in those circles, otherwise cultured, moneyed, intelligent, are carrying on like a bunch of posters at a UFO conspiracy forum
And
and demanding the U.S. intelligence community declassify its information,
selling
I would
crypto, promoting
and,
crypto while they're at
and
it.
simultaneously recommending bad financial investments. I would be shocked if the FBI does not get it, at least ask a few people, you want to
Absolutely.
explain your
Right.
mentality.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And you bring up a really good point, and I think this is it's so hard in some of the areas that we focus on, especially given the current climate, because there is, there's a huge sentiment and a push by specific people, organizations, political parties to distrust the government, to everything the government does is bad, and everybody in the intelligence community is not operating on the best, for the best, the greater good of the public, and that simply is not the case. And I think that, I know that law enforcement officials risk their lives on a daily basis to keep our country safe. And so I just want to make sure that I'm stressing that I'm not one of those people that is saying, because I'm looking into Dugway and potential effects in our community, that I am whitewashing, or covering this with a broad swath. I'm not, because I understand how important national security is. I understand that people put their lives on the line, and I don't want to generalize that, and I just want to make that statement very clear.
Yes, when I had the privilege not ago of spending some time talking with Dave Troy, that he posted his podcast, one of the things we touched on was this mentality: CIA's all bad or CIA's all good. And he pointed out there are even different factions of it. It's not a monolith. There's different parts of it
Absolutely.
that believe certain things. There's different political and social interests of people within the agency, and that sometimes it's even their job to appear that are one leaning or another. It gets complicated, and it kind of gave, as much as I wanted those Nicholas de Roquefort records, I could understand the judge's ruling in the 1970s that it's kind of hard to give these guys the room they need to do their mission, and that they need to tell a journalist exactly what they're doing at the time is just not possible. one more point on Nicholas DeRoe. I am still awaiting approximately 200 pages of records processed by the FBI on um, Nicholas Whitford, who was just a fascinating individual. And so hopefully we'll be getting, they were due last year. So hopefully we'll be getting those sooner than later as well.
Right. And I think, I mean, all of this is so interesting. You and I talk every day because we're putting our, we're putting irons in the fire, and we are making sure that we're moving forward with the organization, and taking public interest and concerns into account as we do this and operate our nonprofit. And it's a very exciting thing. But, we have so many things going on behind the scenes, and I cannot wait, as we start to get records coming into us, to release them and share them with the public and let other people become researchers as well. It's like you take, like we look at a file, or we look at part of the Androphil archive, or we look at some of the FOIA requests that we've gotten, or little bits of information that we've been denied. And then that gives us a jumping off point to dig into other things, to utilize open corporates, to utilize other websites where you can go pacer, to see what's going on in the legal world. And it's fascinating. So there's so many tools that people can utilize to do these things on their own. At some point in time, we will be, with Expanding Frontiers Research, offering a workshop where we can talk a little bit more about this, just like the Utah Investigative Journalist does, talking about how to use records requests. And we want to definitely do that in the next few months, to inform you of how to use resources that are available online, resources that you can register for, and then do your own information, search for specific types of information.
Absolutely. We are just in constant communication about most responsible and efficient ways to use the money that is being generously donated to us. You can go to frontiersresearch.org. Right from the homepage, you can scroll and find all of our social media links, which include Twitter, include the work William Pulling's doing over at Facebook, which include our Patreon, that you can join that for a minimum monthly donation of $15 and support us on an ongoing basis and get look at all of these records, instruction that we're giving, the processes that we're walking through. From that homepage as well, you can use the donate button. Prefer to make a one-time donation, and that takes you to a secure PayPal link, you a number of options there. And from that homepage as well, and access our blog, our video page that has those and the content that Vanessa Valilco and Greenwood and others have helped contribute to. All of the guests, Dave Boy, Aaron Gullius, all the folks, Sarah Scholes, we could just go on, that have helped support us and come here and talk to us about valiant and interesting things. You can access our online archive from that homepage, where you can see the different collection of FOIA requests, material donated by Barry Greenwood. You can see the material Erica has shared that was done to her by Gordon Lohr, by Ann Druffel. You can see the material that we had donated by Emma Woods. So a lot going on. And last but not least, in the show description YouTube, you can find all those links, as well as a link to the EFR YouTube page, that you'll want to go to that and join and subscribe and follow, as well as we continue to beef up content on that platform as
Right.
well.
And that is great to mention. We are going to be doing more video interviews that really reflect the whole body of our work with Expanding Frontiers Research. Those will be available, and we also want to grow that channel, and that's really important. So please go there, click like and subscribe. Make sure you also like and subscribe here as well. And it is really important for all of us to know that people like all of you in chat who are sharing information about our work and helping us kind of grow this. It's a very grassroots process, and we need the community help to do that. As you know, as people who follow Jack and I for many years know, we're kind of going against the grain here. And it's not because we're skeptical, it's because we are grounded and we're trying to make sure that we're putting information forward, especially with Expanding Frontiers research that is based in factual information. And that is really critical to the work that we're doing. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the support. And I also want to say that I appreciate the love and kindness and compassion that you've shown me over the past 3 years, especially. Obviously, I opened the show with a very candid moment where I was sharing my personal experiences. And as you know, they have been horrific. Next week, I will be going to court again. My assault cases are going to allegedly going to trial by jury. And so that is continuing. And I am very grateful that you are supportive. And I look forward to sharing more about that in the hopes that there will be change here in Utah for domestic violence survivors. So, yeah, and absolutely. Thanks, Lou, for everything. And all of you guys, I just want to go through. And Amy, I love you. Michael, it's so good to see you. Scott, I'm going to visit you one day. And Smith, I'm glad that you heard Mufasa sneezing and blessed him because my little sidekick is over there. And Gracie, all of you, Bill, give Venus my love. And it's just Tanner and all of you guys. Paul's in bed by now, but anyway, thanks, Paul, for joining and supporting EFR. So we appreciate you. Jack, any closing thoughts?
I just one more thought on you saying that, against the grain a little and wanting to do good work, reliable. Um, if something's realistic, there's a paper trail. I sometimes it almost seems challenging me to express to people that I'm not interested in what somebody said or what somebody heard if it can't be verified. People say all kinds of things all the time. I want the paper trail. I want the verification. If a man directed a Pentagon UFO project, there's a paper. If he didn't,
Absolutely.
if he didn't, there's not. And similarly, if the CIA was testing drugs and hypnosis on unwitting human research subjects, be a paper trail.
Right.
There is. So that's just what progressed to being interested in at this point. I'm just not interested in getting goose listening to cool stories. I want the meat and potatoes.
Right, absolutely. And that's where the really interesting stuff lies and the kind of the nonsense and chatter and nonsense, everything that's going on above and beyond that. I'm not interested in either because it's not positive and it doesn't do anyone any good. So I appreciate that. And again, Jack, thank you for being my partner with all of this. And again, I want to just thank the Utah Investigative Journalist for giving us recognition for our work on Phenomicon. That is a huge, huge bonus. And then I also want to just give a little shout out to Jack. The Grays Have Been Framed, one of the great books I have here underlined because of everything that you've done with your research. Simon, nice to see you. I love the video that you shared with me, by the way. That was great. And so anyway, thank you all very, very much. I am not sure if I'm going to be here next Friday, but you will see a notification maybe 24 hours before if I'm here. So anyway, thank you guys. Stay out of trouble. You can guarantee that I'm going to rest up for a day, and then I'm bringing trouble on. Jack knows that. He knows I'm good that way. So thank you, Jack.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Absolute
Absolutely.
privilege and pleasure here. Thank
Good,
you, Erica.
good night. Thank you, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon.